Okay, so let's get set up so we can begin creating this cool integration. First thing I'd like you to do is go to Google Drive, then create a new Google Sheet, like so, and we'll give it a name that is relevant. So how about KPI Tracker for now? KPI Tracker, excellent. Next up, go to Zapier.com, open a new tab, and here you just have to create a new account. It's completely free, it takes a couple of seconds, and once you do, just log into your dashboard, which is just here, and leave this tab open. Next, do the exact same thing for MailChimp. Go to mailchimp.com, log into your account, create one if you don't have one, and then just log into your dashboard, which is the very first page that you'll see. Next up, go to blogger.com. And blogger.com should be linked to your Google account already. Just Google Blogger to get to it. And here we're going to create a new blog. So if you don't have a blog already, just create a new blog and follow the prompts. It's pretty straightforward. Just give it a title, address, you choose a template, that's fine. And once you have, I'd like you to open that blog in 2 separate tabs. And the reason being is that we're going to have to create 2 new posts and leave them open. So once you've done that, let's create a new post in one of the tabs, and then make sure it's clicked on HTML selected, and we'll do the same thing for the next one, new post. Right, so you should have 2 tabs open that are identical, that are brand new posts, and we'll just leave the title blank just for now. The final thing you'll need to do is download Sublime Text. Now, Sublime Text is a text editor, it's just a code editor, it's completely free. You can actually download any code editor you want, but this is the one I recommend and the one I'll be using in the course. So go to sublimetext.com and go for it. Just download it. Fantastic. That done, you are ready to begin. So let's go back to our new sheet and skip to the next lecture. Okay, so now we're going to create the 6 worksheets that are going to be at the center of this entire thing. The first one we're going to create is going to be called the dashboard, and this is where we're going to centralize all the KPI data that we're tracking across all the tasks. So head over to the very first sheet, which is sheet 1, double click, and rename the dashboard. The next sheet we're going to create is the first task that we want to track. So go ahead and create a new sheet, and name it after this first task. I'm going to call mine blog. Now we're going to create another sheet called the backend. This is where we're going to store all the formulas that we won't be using on a day-to-day basis. In other words, they just sit at the back and run things the way we want them to. So go ahead and create a new sheet, label it backend. And the next sheet we're going to create is going to be called the KPI emailer. And this is going to be the worksheet that Google Scripts uses later on to send out all the automatic emails. And now we're going to create another really important sheet called incoming subscribers. This is the one that Zapier is going to use to store all the email signups that it gets from the MailChimp API. So let's go ahead and create that now. And I also like to add the words "don't touch" here as well. And the reason why I add these is so just in case you happen to share this with a team member who isn't as familiar with how you set it up, they're not going to go ahead and modify this sheet. And now the final sheet that we're going to create is called the Week Tracker Generator, or Week Tracker Gen for short. Let's create that now. And this is going to be the worksheet that allows our spreadsheet to stop counting KPI data at the end of one week and start again at the beginning of the next, so that we have this history of KPI data that we can later analyze in the dashboard. Fantastic! Well, now that you've got all this set up, you're ready to get going. The first thing you have to do is select B5 and enter equals VLOOKUP. Now, to make a VLOOKUP statement work, first you have to give it something to look up, then you have to tell it where to look, then you have to also tell it what to return back to you once it's found what you're after. So, to begin, let's go over to the backend sheet. We're going to be looking up today's date, so select C2. Now press comma. And where are we going to be looking up today's date? Well, we're going to be looking up in this range here, which is columns D, E, and F. So select from D to F, press comma, and we want to return the number, so the number of the current week. And where are our numbers? Well, they're in column F. This is the third column in our range, so you can write the number 3. Add a comma. Finally, you have to enter the word false. And what this does is it makes sure it will only give you an answer if it can actually find today's date. If it can't, it will give you an error. Press enter. Brilliant! And as you can see, we are in current week 1. How cool is that? But now that we have our number, we might want to get our date as well. So let's select B6 and add another VLOOKUP statement. And we're going to do a similar thing. Head over to the backend sheet, select C2, comma, our whole range, comma, and now we have to find the current Monday of the week that we're in. And the Mondays, of course, are in column E. So we're going to write 2, because that is the second column in our range, followed by a comma and false. Too easy. Now we also might stretch out column B, so we can read all our entries. And now that we've established the current week, it's actually very easy to get our days remaining formula. All we have to do is add 7 days to our current week here in B6, then minus today's date. So let's do that. Select B7, write equals, brackets, B6 plus 7, brackets, then minus today's date, which is over in the backend sheet. So select backend, then select C2. Too easy. We have 2 days remaining to hit our KPIs for the week. The pressure's on. Next up, we have our traction channel that our task fits into. For this one, we will also create a list. So head over to the backend worksheet. And in column G, I'd like you to add the 19 traction channels. I've given you these in the lecture description if you're after them. I'm going to paste them in now. Fantastic. If you haven't heard of the 19 traction channels, these are just ways of categorizing the marketing activities you do to promote your business. So now you can head back over to the blog sheet, right-click on B8, data validation, select the range, go to the backend, select the whole of column G, press OK and save. Back to the blog sheet and we've got our list. And the traction channel that the blog fits into, of course, is going to be content marketing. Now for our engagement method. This is just going to be a small statement that covers how you are going to engage your users. So what we might do is select B9 and B10, then merge the cells together. For the task strategy below, we are also going to select a few cells together and merge them. The task strategy is just going to be a short paragraph that outlines where this task fits into the overall growth of the business. Brilliant! Now you've almost finished setting up this sheet, but before we finish, we have to add a workspace to track all the KPIs. So up in rows 1 and 2, we're going to add some weeks over here. So in C1, enter the word week, and in C2, enter the word date. Now up in our week row here, we want to have the word week followed by the number of the week. So we want to have week 1, week 2, and week 3, so forth. We can do this manually, but I have a really cool trick that I want to show you. So the first thing you have to do in D2, enter 1. Then in E2, enter equals D2 plus 1. Now what we're going to do is select and drag this formula across to populate the rest of the rows until we hit 15. If you've gone too far, that's fine. Just select the remaining ones and delete them. Now we have all the numbers from 1 to 15 in all these columns. The next thing we're going to do is select the remaining columns that we don't need and delete them. So select from column S all the way to the end, right click and delete. Now we're going to use one of my favorite all-time formulas. This is called the concatenation formula. And what it does is simply appends strings and numbers and cells. So you can literally combine anything you like all together in one thing. So in D1, enter equals concatenate. And the first thing we need to add is the string week. So in quotation marks, write week, just like that. And the reason we need to enter quotation marks is to let the spreadsheet know that we're entering in a string or a word or a sentence. Next, add a comma. Now we have to add a space, and that is because the concatenation formula doesn't actually understand that we want to separate the word week from the number. So what we have to do is enter a quotation marks, space, and quotation marks, followed by a comma. So we have week, space. Now we just want to enter the number. And the number for this first week is going to be here in D2. So select D2. And now press enter. Brilliant. And we have week 1. If you want to get week 2, well, all we have to do is drag and copy this formula across. And we can do it for the rest of the entire spreadsheet. So let's select D1, copy and drag right across to column R. Brilliant, we have our 15 weeks. However, now it's time to get rid of these temporary numbers that we put here in the date row. Let's delete a few and let's see what happens. Oh no, what just happened? It looks like in weeks 1, 2, and 3, and 4, we now have week nothing. And the reason is because our formula is still trying to grab the number from D2. At the moment there is nothing in D2, hence week nothing. To fix this, we have to perform a special copy and paste trick. I'm going to show you how to do this now. So let's begin by undoing this action. Now what we're going to do is select from D1 all the way down to R1, and you can do this by selecting D1, then holding Shift, and then selecting R1. Now we're going to right click and copy. Now we're going to go back to D1 and right click and paste special and paste values only. This is going to remove all the formulas we had and only keep the string week 1, week 2, etc. Which means that now we can delete all the remaining numbers we have in row 2, like so, and we have no implications to our weeks up in row 1. Getting the date for week 1 in D2 right here is actually now very easy. All we have to do in D2 is write equals, then go to backend, and select the first Monday in week 1. Great. Next, to get week 2, all we have to do is write equals D2 plus 1, then copy and drag this formula in E2 across the rest of the columns. Great. Now, to be able to read all of these dates, we have to resize all of these columns. Doing this one by one would take a lot of time. Instead, I'll show you a really cool trick. All you have to do is select the entire sheet by selecting this little part of the spreadsheet up here. Now we can double click on any of these handlers, and that will resize all the columns for us, which is really handy. All we might have to do is drag out column C a little bit to make it even. And before we move on, we might finish off rows 1 and 2 here by adding some color. So select from D1 through to R1, and we'll give this a dark blue background with white text. Then scroll back and select from D2 through to R2, and we'll give this a nice light blue background, like so. We'll also color in our headers just here, maybe a slightly different blue. And finally, we have our KPI workspace. Let's begin by adding some headers in column C. In C3, we can enter KPI 1. This will be the actual KPI we set. Then we have the KPI 1 result. So what was the actual KPI that we got? Then we'll have KPI 1 remaining. So what we have left in that week to get for the KPI. Then we have KPI 1 percentage complete and KPI 1 type, which is going to be email signups in this case. Then we're going to select all those. We're going to give them a nice background color, maybe dark gold with light yellow text, and we'll create a break cell just here in C8. So we'll just color that in the darkest shade of gold. Brilliant. But because I'm going to be showing you how you can track KPIs across 2 landing pages, so multiple landing pages, we're going to create a second KPI as well. So all you have to do is select from C3 to C8, copy, then paste again starting from C9. Now we have to go through and change all those 1s to a 2. Next, we'll delete all the rows that we're not using, so select row 15, scroll to the very end of the sheet, hold Shift and select row 1000 just there, right-click and delete. Now that your sheet is set up, we're going to do 2 things to make it a little easier to use and to read. So the first thing we're going to do is freeze all the first 3 columns. So select any cell in column C, go up to View, Freeze, then select up to column C. Brilliant. The next thing we're going to do is something that not many people know about. We're going to color in every second row so it's easier to line up the data with the headings. Now, doing this manually, of course, is pretty straightforward. Simply select the cells you want to color in and then select the color picker. But a much cooler way of doing it, and a way that does it automatically really quickly, is by using conditional formatting and a very special formula. So what we're going to do is select from D3 all the way down to R14, so our entire workspace here of empty cells. Now right-click, open conditional formatting, and add a new rule. Now for our condition formula, we're going to go down to Custom Formula Is. That's the very last one down the bottom of the list there. And for the formula, I'd like you to enter the following. Write equals is even brackets row brackets and then 2 closing brackets. And have a look at this. It's actually colored in every second row, and if you look really carefully, it's colored in every second even row, so row 4, row 6, row 8, and so on. And the cool thing about this formula is that you can actually change it. We can change even to odd, and it will color in every second odd row. And the cool thing about this formula is if you ever have to add another row in, it will automatically adjust itself for you, like so. And one more thing I want to show you over here is that you can also change the argument row to column, and that will color in every second column. So this is one really cool formula here. Anyway, I'll change it back to what we had before. So we had row and even. Great. Now we're going to give it a nice color that isn't too intrusive. How about hot pink? Maybe not. Maybe that's a little intrusive. How about light gray? There we go. Much better. Click done, and you're finished. Magnificent! Well, let's go to the next lecture where we'll bring this thing to life. Alright, so the first worksheet that we're going to start work on is going to be this second sheet that we created, our task worksheet. I've called mine blog, so let's head over to there. And in columns A and B, we're going to begin by adding some details about the task. The first one we'll have, starting from A1, will be the task, followed by its priority, followed by who it's delegated to, followed by the hours per week that we're going to dedicate to this task, followed by the current week that we're in. And the current week is going to be calculated automatically for you, which is really, really cool. Now, the current week is going to require 2 cells, so we're going to leave the cell below blank. And let's proceed to A7, where we're going to enter the days remaining. The days remaining, by the way, will also be calculated automatically. The next one we'll have is the traction channel this task belongs to. So just enter channel. And in A9, we're going to have the engagement method. The engagement method will take up 2 cells, so we'll leave another one blank. Proceed to A11 and enter task strategy. Fantastic. Now we'll give column A a nice dark background color. So select the whole of column A, go up to the background color selector tool, select the third darkest gray, and we're going to do a different thing for the text. Let's give it a light yellow color so it really stands out. Select text color, go up to light yellow. Fantastic. Now we'll also stretch out column A so we can read our engagement method fully here. And we're going to do a similar thing in column B. We're going to select the whole of column B, go up to the color picker, and we'll give it a light yellow background, and we'll leave the text as it is. So now we can go ahead and fill out all the details about the task that we're tracking in column B. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's start from B1, where our task is going to be blog. Or blog a dog, whichever one you fancy. For our priority in B2, we're going to create a drop-down list using data validation. If you haven't heard of data validation before, you're going to find this one enlightening. The first thing we're going to do is head over to the backend. And in A1 and A2, we're going to add 2 priorities. Let's say normal in A1 and high for A2. Next, head back over to the blog sheet, select B2, right-click, go down to data validation. Now, this box will appear here with list from a range selected by default. All you have to do now is select this little range selector icon, and when it asks you for which data to select, head back over to the backend sheet, select the whole of column A, now click OK and save. Now when you head back to the blog sheet that we created, you'll see a little arrow in B2 here, and if you select it, you'll see we have a list that we can now select our priority from. So let's select high, because it is a blog after all. By the way, just a little quick note, if you head back to the backend sheet, The reason I selected the whole of column A for our data validation range was so that if we ever want to add another priority in, we can do so just like so. Let's say we've got low as well for priority. Now when we head back over to the blog sheet, it will appear in our list. Whereas if I hadn't selected column A and only selected the cells that contained our priorities, then of course we couldn't do this. So let's head back over to the blog sheet. Now for delegated to in B3, we're going to do the same thing that we did in B2, which is create a list. So head over to the backend sheet, and in column B, I'd like you to list down all the names of the people in your team. So for example, I might have person 1, person 2, and Yoda. Why not have Yoda? If you want to add more than one person by creating a group, you can do so by separating them with a comma, like so. Once you've got all the names of the people in your team, head back over to the blog sheet, right-click on B3, go to Data Validation, select the Range Selector icon, click on the backend sheet, select the whole of column B. OK, and save. Fantastic! Now we've got our list of the people that this task is delegated to. Let's say we've delegated it to Yoda. For our hours per week, we can enter this in manually. So let's just enter 300 hours. Because after all, it is a blog. And now for our current week. This one is going to be calculated automatically for us, of course, and so it's going to be a little less straightforward than one might think. To get things going here, let's head over to the backend sheet. Now the first thing we're going to do is prepare a few columns for a special formula that we're going to use back in our blog sheet later on. Our first step to achieve this is to find today's date, and luckily Google Sheets has a function specifically for that. So in column C, I'd like you to label it today, just so you know what you're putting in this column. And in C2, we're going to find today's date by typing the following, equals today, and then write open brackets and closing brackets. Fantastic! So now that we have today's date, we're going to format it in a way that makes it a little bit easier to read. So let's select C2. Now go up to the More Formats icon, and at the very bottom, let's select the full date format here, Friday, September 26th. Brilliant. Now we're going to stretch out column C, so we can read our full date, and we're ready to proceed to column D. And in column D, what we want to do is create a list of dates that covers all the weeks that we want to track, and that starts from today's date. So let's begin by labeling column D Date List. Next up, in D2, we're going to enter our first date manually, and this is going to be the date that the spreadsheet uses to begin tracking KPIs. So you can enter today's date. Once you've entered the date, select D2, go up to More Formats, and let's select the full date format down the bottom, and we'll drag the column D out until we can read the full date. Now that we have our first date, we need to begin adding all the consecutive dates down the rest of column D. Doing this manually would be very time consuming, so I've got a much faster way of doing it, which I will show you right now. The first step is to select D3, then use a formula to find the day that follows our starting day over here in D2. So select D3 and enter equals D2 plus 1. And sure enough, we have our following day. The next step is to populate this formula down the whole of column D To fill out the rest of column D with this formula, you can click, drag, and scroll down until all the cells are filled. But there's a much faster way to do it, and that is simply to select that first formula that we entered in D3, now scroll down to the very end of the sheet, and holding Shift, select the final cell in column D, which is going to be D1000 in this case. Now all you have to press is Control or Command D, and that will straight away populate the whole of that column. Once you've done that, scroll back up to the very top of the worksheet and label column E Mondays. And the reason that we've labeled column E Mondays is because in each of these cells, we're going to be inserting the Monday that corresponds to the beginning of the week for each of the days in column D. If that's a bit confusing, don't worry, let's enter a few and then it will all make sense. So select E2, enter equals D2, which is our first date. Now we have to find the starting Monday of that week. For me, I've got Saturday, June the 25th, and because Saturday is the 6th day of the week, we're going to have to write -5. And now we have the beginning of the week relative to the day here in D2. To get the next one, we're going to enter a similar formula, only we're going to alter the number we're subtracting by. So in E3, enter equals D3, and this time write -6. Because this spreadsheet here begins on a Saturday, my first week actually starts here in E4. So to save some time, I'm going to begin by selecting E3 and clicking and dragging down until we get our first full week here, which is going to be in E10. Now I can just go back and modify all these formulas until we get only Mondays. So in E4, we're not going to have any subtraction. I can just remove the -6 because we have a Monday here in D4. For the next one, I will have to make this D5 -1. Because we've got Wednesday here, it's going to be D5 -2, and so on. -3, -4, -5, and -6. The next step involves selecting all 7 Mondays in a row, beginning from the one that corresponds to the first Monday of the full week here. And now we have to copy and paste them adjacent to all the Mondays down the rest of the page. But before we do that, we're going to make our lives a little easier by coloring in all the cells in column D that contain the word Monday. To do this, select the whole of column D, right-click, and open conditional formatting. Once you've done that, we're going to create a rule for a very specific condition. So select the condition selector and select the condition text contains. Now just enter the word Monday. And sure enough, all of our Mondays here are now highlighted green by default. That's perfect. Select Done, and then Quit. Now back to the job at hand, select your first set of 7 Mondays in column E, and copy with Ctrl-C or Command-C, and go ahead and paste next to every adjacent Monday here in column D. Now, for the purposes of demonstration, I'm only going to do this for 15 weeks, which means our sheet is only going to track 15 weeks worth of KPI data. If you want to track a lot more, go for it. You can enter as many sets of Mondays as you like. Fantastic. I've definitely gone over 15 weeks by now. Great. Now we just have one more column to deal with. Over in column F, I'd like you to label this Week Numbers. And here we're just going to have the number of the week that each of these corresponding days here are in. So for example, the first 2 days here are both in week 1. So enter 1 manually. For all the rest of the weeks, we're going to have 2s and then 3s and so forth. The easiest way to fill this out is to simply enter the starting number for each of these Mondays. So we'll enter 2 here in F4. Find the next Monday along and enter 3. The next Monday and enter 4. So week 4 and so forth. I'm going to keep doing this up until week 15. Fantastic. Now scroll up to the very top of the sheet, and what I'd like you to do is to select each number and drag down until you reach the final empty cell of that week, then press Ctrl or Command D. And then repeat this process for the rest. Fantastic. Great, well now we're ready to go back to the blog sheet and create a really cool formula called the VLOOKUP formula. Let's go there now. Okay, so now we're going to have some fun setting up the custom MailChimp sign-up forms, and then we're going to embed them in 2 separate landing pages so we can track all these sign-ups. So the first thing I'd like you to do is in D3 over in our blogging sheet, which is your task sheet, I'd like you to add a KPI. I'm going to add 100, and that means 100 email signups. So that's my KPI for week 1. Next up, for KPI 1 result, we can't go any further until we set up MailChimp properly. So head over to MailChimp, and you should arrive at your dashboard, which is just here. Now, what I'd like you to do is go to lists. And if you haven't created a list yet, what you should do is go ahead and create a new list. So just click Create List, then Create List again, and you just go through all these fields, so you can just create that. Once you have, go back to the list page, and then open up the list that you just created by clicking on it. Now from here, go to Sign Up Forms, then General Forms, and in General Forms, go down to this section here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add a hidden text field that actually captures which landing page users have signed up from. So what you should do, with add a field selected, which is selected by default, click on text. Now this little dialog box will open up, and for the field label, this is just for your personal reference. So just write sign up form location, so you know what this field label is for. For the field tag, this is the part of the code that we're going to be editing. So for this, we'll really have to write something that makes a lot of sense. And the other thing is, so you can't actually have that many numerals or characters anyway. So you just write sign up, all capitals, leave required fields unchecked, and for field visibility, click hidden. That's the important one. Now click save. Now sure enough, we've got sign up form location here, and it's covered with this watermark, this hidden blue watermark, so you know it's hidden. So that's all set and done. Now go back up to the very top and click on sign up forms again. And this time, let's go to the embedded forms option. Now once in embedded form, scroll down and you'll find the HTML code for this embedded form. So just click on it once, copy it. Now we're going to head over to Sublime Text. Now, if you haven't got that open, just open it now. If you have, just Alt-Tab or to it. And I've already got something pasted in here, I'll just delete it. So what you're meant to do is just paste it in. So Control-V or Command-V. And from here, we're going to have to edit this code. So we're tracking the specific landing page. And this one will do for landing page 1, for the first one. So the first thing we need to find is the line that has the form action on it. To do this, the easiest way is to press Control F, which I've already done here, which will open up this dialog box down here, and just type form action, and it will appear up here in line 9. Here it is. Now we have this tag here, this string, And what we want to do at the very end of this string, like just before the end of these quotation marks, we're going to add the little tag at the end that tells it to label this as landing page 1. So what you have to do is type the and symbol at the end of that, between that B and the colon there on this screen. And now write sign up in full capitals, which is that label that you made. And now we're going to write equals, and now we get to use the word for the landing page that we're tracking. So I'm just going to write landing page 1, all lowercase. So that's what I'd like you to do in this case. If you want to do it for actual landing pages of your website or the platform's website, you might want to call this like home page or contact page. So you're tracking each landing page where they're coming from. So this one's landing page 1. Once you've done that, press Control or Command A and select the whole thing. Then press Control C or Command C and copy it. Now we're going to head over to Blogger. And in this new blog that you created, we're going to make it that new post, which you should already have open actually. And we're going to click on HTML, which should already be selected, then paste it in. Now you don't have to edit any of the code here, just paste it in. And if you go back to compose, you'll find that we've got the unstylized sign up form just all there, which is fine. That's perfect. Now we're going to give it a title. Let's call it landing page 1. Even though my blog's called landing page 1, it's a bit confusing, but ignore that. So we're going to create 2 posts, one landing page 1, one landing page 2, and we're going to do a similar thing for landing page 2 soon. So firstly, click publish. And there it is. Now we're going to create another one. So landing page 2. So create new post. We'll call it landing page 2. And in here, we'll click on HTML again, but this time we're going to go to Sublime Text, back to Sublime Text. And all we have to do now for the landing page 2 custom embedded code is change that 1 to a 2. So now literally the sign up tag is going to be landing page 2 now. So press Control A or Command A, then Control C or Command C, and go over to Blogger again, and we're going to paste it into the HTML section there and publish. So sometimes you'll see this little error up here. Just click fix if it turns up. I mean, that's perfectly normal. Now click publish. Wonderful, we got cancel. Brilliant. Okay, so now if you hold Control or Command on a Mac and click View for both of these landing pages, so we open them both in new tabs, when we go over to them, you'll notice we've got these 2 landing pages with what looks like the exact same embedded MailChimp list, only one's tracking for landing page 1 and one's tracking for landing page 2, which is exactly what we want. What we might do at this point is we might copy the URLs for each of these and paste them back into our KPI tracker. So all you have to do is go up to the top of the browser, copy the URL, which is just off screen here at the moment. You go back to your sheet, and in these 2 breaks that we've got here, so in column C8 and C14, we're just going to write the words link here, and then select it. Now press Control or Command K, then paste it in and press apply. Excellent. So we've got our first link for first landing page. Now we'll do the same thing for the second. So go to the second landing page here, copy the URL in the browser, go back to this sheet. We're going to enter a link here. Now press Control K with that cell selected and Control V, Control or Command of course, and now press enter. Brilliant. Now before we finish, we do have to do one small thing, and that is we have to go to the MailChimp list we created and create at least 1 entry, so at least 1 subscriber. And this is due to the way Zapier uses the MailChimp API. It needs at least 1 entry to model all the data off and where to put it. So we're going to do that now. So you can either just go to one of the landing pages that you made and just literally subscribe to it. So just enter your email address, first name, last name, subscribe. You can either do it that way, or you can go to your MailChimp list and enter it in manually. So just click on the list, go to add subscribers and add a subscriber. Either of those will work fine. Okay, great. So now we can move on to wielding Zapier like Thor. And now the moment we've all been waiting for, the live Zapier integration. By far the coolest part of this whole sheet. But before we set it up, we have to make sure our spreadsheet is ready for Zapier. So let's do that now. Head over to your spreadsheet and then click on the incoming subscribers worksheet. Now what we need to do is create one row of headers so that Zapier knows where to put the data when it sends it through. We're going to do this in row 1, of course. So add the following headers in row 1, starting from A1. The first one is email address. Then we have the first name. Then we have last name. Then we'll have sign up form location. And finally, we'll have the date added. So the date they actually signed up. Excellent. That done, we can head over to Zapier and start making the integration. So go to the Zapier.com. Here's the dashboard. So make sure you've logged into the dashboard. Do that now if you haven't. And then click Make a Zap. Here we go. Okay, so how Zapier works is that you have to choose a trigger app and an action app. And recently they even extended this so you can add even more. But for our purposes, we're just going to use 2, a trigger and an action. The trigger is going to be MailChimp, so select MailChimp. Now select new subscriber, because we want to trigger this every time we get a new subscriber. Now go to Save and Continue. Next, you'll have to attach your MailChimp account, so you can do that via this button here. I've already attached our one here, so I'm going to click Save and Continue. Next, you'll have to choose the list that you made and that you added that new subscriber to. So select the drop-down list, and you should find it amongst this selection. Then click Continue. Next, you just get a little checklist to make sure everything's fine. It should tell you if there's something's not quite right. Click Fetch and Continue. And the test was successful, which means that Zapier went into the list, made sure that there was at least one subscriber in it, and it was all worked fine. So click Continue. Okay, now for our action app. All you have to do is select Google Sheets. If this isn't already up here, you will find it in the popular app section here, or you can actually search it in the search bar here. So click Google Sheets. Now we want to create a spreadsheet row each time a new subscriber comes through. So click Create Spreadsheet Row. You'll have to connect your Google account. I've already connected my one, so I'll click Save Continue. Once you've done, click Save Continue. Now you'll have to select the specific spreadsheet that actually has the worksheet that you want to use. So select it, and then select the worksheet within it, which is going to be your incoming subscribers worksheet. Live Zapier Do Not Touch, that one. Fantastic. Now you'll be presented with the actual fields that you entered in that actual sheet, and there should be 5. We've got first name, email address, sign up form, date added, last name. They probably won't come in the right order. That's perfectly fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to match up all the parts of the data in the MailChimp embed and put it into the right column. So in first name, click that little plus sign, and all this is a bit jumbled up. You're just going to have to sift through until you find these tags. We've got merges first name. There it is. So that's the first name. You can click on that. For the email address, find where it just says email. For the sign up form location, usually that you have to scroll way down for that one until you see landing page 2. There you go, merges sign up. There it is. The next one, the date added, that's second from the top, timestamp. And the final one, which is last name, I'm going to have to zoom out of my browser so I can actually click on this one. It should just be not too far from the top. There you go, merges last name. Excellent. And I'll zoom back in for your convenience. Great. Okay, and then click Continue. Great, now you get this summary, so you can just double check that everything is as it is, and that it's all how you like it, and then click Create and Continue. Fantastic. Now what happens is Zapier has created a test row just to make sure everything's great, and you can go over and check it. So go back to your sheet and then go to incoming subscribers and check this out. We've got the full entry here that Zapier has created automatically for us, and a little note by Zapier saying that they created, which is kind of helpful. Now, one thing I will say about Zapier though is that once you get over 100 signups a month, you'll actually have to start paying for the service. So that may not work for you, or may. If you're getting a huge amount of subscribers, you would have to pay for the top tier plan of Zapier. There is a better way at that point to do it, which is that you can just manually paste in all the signups you get. It's not as automated, of course, but it gets the job done and it avoids you having to pay a lot of money to track all these things. So that's another way of doing it. Brilliant. Well, now that you've got Zapier up and running, head over to the next lecture where I'll show you how you can customize your sheet to track each week of KPIs individually and actually stop counting at the end of each week. Awesome. Okay, so now we're going to set up our sheet so that it can track KPIs on a week-by-week basis. This means it needs to be able to stop counting at the end of one week and begin counting at the beginning of the next. Let's have a look at how we might do this. So, we'll go to the week tracker generator, and in A1, write equals, then head over to the incoming subscribers worksheet and select column D, and then press enter. Excellent. The next thing we want to do in column B is drag in all the dates. So in B1, type equals, head over to incoming subscribers, and let's select the whole of column E. Now press enter. Brilliant. Now in column C, what we're going to do, which will be a little peculiar, is we're going to convert all the dates that we have in column B into integers. And the reason we have to do this is because we have to convert the timestamp that MailChimp provides us into a string of numbers that we can use in our spreadsheet formulas. So, at the top of column C, in C1, I'd like you to add date as int, just so you know what we're putting in this column. And we're going to write the following formula. If B2 equals nothing, then display nothing. Otherwise, turn B2 into an integer. And that's how we do it. So just going through that formula again, if B2 equals nothing, then display nothing. That way we don't get an error. Otherwise, turn B2 into an integer, and then you close it off with the brackets there. Fantastic. Now we're going to populate the rest of these three columns with all these formulas. So the first thing I'd like you to do is to select from A1 to B1, and then drag copy them down one cell. Now that we have all of our formulas lined up together, we can select all three, scroll to the very end of the sheet, holding Shift, select the final cell in column C, then press Ctrl or Command D. Fantastic. And now you will have populated those three columns. Now back up the top of the sheet, we're going to create the part that will be able to test each of these entries to find out which week they're in. So up in column D, I'd like you to begin by adding all the week numbers up here in row 1. The easiest way to do this is select D1, press equals, go over to the blog sheet, and then select D1, which is the first of our weeks just up there. Now press enter. And now we'll drag and copy this across to fill out the remaining cells. Brilliant. Next up, in D2, we're going to use an OR statement to figure out whether the date here in C2 is in week 1. And how an OR statement works is it is a logical operator, which means that it can only return true or false. And the test we're going to do here is quite simple. Now enter equals or brackets, and what we want to test is if C2 over here is equal to the date in week 1. So we select C2, we write equals, and we will find the date for week 1 over in our blog sheet. It's going to be D2. Now press enter. Excellent. So we've established that the date here in C2, which is nothing right now, certainly does not equal the date in week 1 over here, which is the Monday 6th of June. However, we have more than one day in a week. We've got 7. So now we have to get this OR statement to test for all 7 days. How are we going to do this? Well, we simply have to add some more arguments. So after blog D2, add a comma, and now we're going to extend the formula. Let's say C2 equals, now we'll select blog, and then select D2 plus 1. And now we have to keep doing this until we get to the full 7 days. So after blog D2, add a comma. Now we're going to extend the formula. So once again, select C2, and now write equals blog D2 plus 1, and press enter. Now we're testing if the date in C2 equals the Monday or the Tuesday. Monday plus 1, which is Tuesday. We have to do this for the remaining days of the week. So the easiest way to do this is to select that last part of the formula, including the comma there, copy with Control or Command C, now paste until we have up to 6 times. I'll paste one more just in case. Once you've done that, go back through and correct all these numbers to increment them by 1. So we have 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Easy as that. Now press enter. Now, what happens when we want to copy this formula down for all these dates and all these entries we have in these columns here? Well, let's try. We're going to click, drag, and copy a few cells down. Now, you'll notice something isn't quite right. All of a sudden, we are getting trues when we should be getting falses. Let's inspect the formula to find out what's wrong. Looking closely here at our formulas as we scroll down through them, we can see that our original reference for our blog D2, which is the date, is changing as the formula has been copied down. This is not what we want. We need to find a way to make this original cell reference up here in D2, which is blog D2 here, stay the same for all of these formulas as we copy them down. And the way we do this is by making them absolute. To make a cell reference absolute, all you need to do is select the cell reference anywhere in the cell reference just here in the formula bar, then press the key F4. This adds 2 dollar signs next to both the D and the 2, and this makes the reference absolute, which means that if you copy it left, right, up or down, it will always remain D2. We're going to do this for the remainder of these cell references here. So let's go through and press F4 on each one. Brilliant. Now press enter. Now it's time to make sure that the formula really does work when we copy it. So select D2, click, drag and copy, and drag it down a few cells. Much better. It looks like our formulas are correct. But now that we've got our first formula working up here in row 2, what about the rest of our formulas here for the other weeks? Do we seriously have to write them all out by hand? Well, not exactly. I do have a bit of a workaround to save you some time. So the first thing I'd like you to do is drag your browser out so that it fills half the screen. Next, right-click on your desktop and create a new text document. Open the text document, minimize it so it takes up the other half of the screen, or let's say a portion of the screen, and now we're going to go to Edit and open Find and Replace. Drag Find and Replace out a little bit so that it's nice and out of the way, like so. Now what we have to do is select D2, which has our formula, select the whole formula by double-clicking in the formula bar, press Control or Command C, then paste using Control or Command V into the text document. And all we have to do to get our week 2 date is change this blog D2 to blog E2. Because if we go back to our blog sheet over here, the next Monday is actually in E2 here, which is simple enough. So all we have to do is find the letter D and replace it with E. But one thing I always do when I'm using find and replace with spreadsheets is I always like to find another reference I can add here to make sure that if these letters appear in other cell references that we do not want to change, that we don't change them. In this case, we can just put a $sign before each of the letters to make sure that it is indeed capturing $D, like that. Let's click Replace All. Excellent. And now we have the formula here that we can copy and paste into E2. So press Control or Command C and Control or Command V into E2. Excellent. Easy as that. Now we just have to repeat the process for the remaining weeks. And you can do this as fast as you can. Let's give it a shot. We can start by copying the $E, pasting it into the find, and now replace the E with F, the next letter in the alphabet. Replace all, copy the formula, paste, and so forth. Next one will be G, replace, then we have H, replace, then we have I, replace. Let's scroll over here so we can see the remaining weeks. Then we have J, then we have K, then L, then M, then we have N, and we have 4 more columns to go. O, P, Q, and finally R. Once you've done that, scroll back through all the formulas in your spreadsheet and just make sure that you haven't missed any letters. Looking good. Now for the fun part. Let's select from D2 and then Shift select R2. Now let's scroll to the very end of the sheet and Shift select the final cell in column R. Now, are you ready? Press Control or Command D. And this will be an epic post into your spreadsheet. And you'll see a lot of falses everywhere, and that indicates that our formulas are working. So to quickly recap how this part of the spreadsheet is going to work so far, Zapier is going to push an email sign-up into this worksheet. Then the date and the landing page gets dragged into the week tracker generator. Then we will convert the dates into integers. Then we will use OR statements to test which week this date falls into. And now for the final leg of the journey, let's go back to our blog sheet and do the test. Let's start by entering a KPI in D3. Let's say 100 email signups. That's our target, our KPI. Next up, for our KPI1 result, we're going to enter a very interesting formula indeed. This is where the test is going to happen. Let's write equals if D3 equals nothing, then nothing. And now we're going to use a special formula called COUNTIFs with an S. So write COUNTIFs and press enter. And what COUNTIFs will do is only count something if multiple criteria exist, which makes it perfect for what we need. So to begin a COUNTIF statement, the first thing we need to do is specify the range of one of the criteria we're searching for. The first criteria that we're going to test for is if the email sign-up has come through landing page 1. After all, that is what our KPI 1 is meant to be tracking, landing page 1. So, firstly, head over to the week tracker generator and select the whole of column A, which is all our landing pages. Now press comma. And now we want to test for landing page 1. So, in inverted commas, just write the words landing page 1 without any spaces. Brilliant. The other criteria we need to test, of course, is if the email sign up has come in week 1. So this time, let's select the range for week 1, so the whole of column D. Now press comma, and we only want to return a positive result if our answer in column D is true. So in inverted commas, enter the word true. Brilliant. Now press enter. Well done. Now we have this really cool counter that's going to constantly check how many signups we got in week 1 from landing page 1. Now, our KPI 1 remaining field below is going to serve two purposes. The first one is going to be a counter that just counts down the number of email signups we have left to go to hit this KPI up here. And the second is going to be a small message that tells us when we've actually hit our KPI. So let's start with an if statement, equals if, then D4 equals nothing, then say nothing, so we don't get an error. Now we're going to enter another if statement. So press space, then write if brackets again, and this time we're going to test if the KPI 1 result has superseded what the KPI 1 was in the beginning. To do this, we're going to say if D3 minus D4 is less than or equal to 0, then print the word none. Otherwise, just perform the calculation, D3 minus D4. Great. This means that this formula here will continuously count down until it hits 0, and then it will just display the word none, which will be important later on for our Google script that sends the emails. Now, getting our KPI 1% complete was actually relatively easy. Once again, we'll start with an if statement, equals if brackets D5 equals nothing, then nothing. Otherwise, D4 divided by D3. Brilliant. And that gives us our percentage here. For our KPI 1 type, well, this is simply email signups. And this will be the same for every single week. It just doesn't change. Fantastic. Now, to fill out our fields for KPI 2, all we need to do is select and copy the data in these fields and paste them in for KPI 2. However, we do need to make one critical change, and that is in D10, which is our KPI 2 result. We need to open the formula and change landing page 1 to 2. Of course, because KPI 2 is tracking the second landing page. Press enter. Now, it might seem like we're ready to start copying these formulas across to populate the rest of these columns. We can try that for a couple and see what happens. Okay, everything's looking pretty normal, apart from the fact that we've lost our conditional formatting here. However, if you closely inspect any of the KPI result formulas and have a look at the ones that you've copied across, you'll notice something isn't quite right. Can you figure out what it is? So you'll notice that the week tracker gen reference here is changing, which is perfectly fine. We want that to change so it captures the correct week. But what about the reference over here? The week tracker gen column B, the first reference, which is landing page 1. If we go back over to the week tracker gen, you'll notice that there is no other column that has all the landing pages in it. Only the first one, only column A. So if we go back to the blog sheet and this is changing, then it's not going to be even looking for landing page 1 anymore. It's going to be looking in all the wrong columns. So all we have to do to fix this is go back to the very first formula here in D4 and make this cell reference absolute. So click into the cell reference and press F4. and enter. Very good. And we're going to have to do the same one for KPI2 result just down here. So select the cell reference, and press F4. And enter. Brilliant. Now you really are ready to copy these formulas across and populate the rest of these columns. So what I'd like you to do is select from D3 all the way down to D14, and we're going to have to use the copy and drag handle here, because if we use the Control D function, it won't work across columns. That only works down rows or up rows. So let's select our copy and drag a handle, drag it to the very end of the sheet, and we have all our formulas. Now our conditional formatting is a bit messed up here, so what we're going to do is select that whole workspace again, starting from D3 down to R14, right click, open conditional formatting. We're just going to delete this rule, and we'll add a new rule, scroll down to customer formula is, add that formula in again, which was equals, is, even, brackets, row, brackets, brackets, like that. Select light gray, and click done. I will have to zoom out of my browser slightly, so I can hit the done button, and I'll zoom back in for your convenience. Too easy. And voila, you've done it. Next up, some awesome Google scripting. Yes! Now we're up to the part that I can't wait to show you. We're going to create an automatic Google script that will send out emails to you and your entire team each time a KPI has been met, and it will even do it when the spreadsheet is closed, so that's pretty cool. The first thing I'd like you to do is to head over to the KPI emailer spreadsheet that you created at the very beginning of this course. Now the first thing we're going to do is give our column some labels. For column A, in A1, I'd like you to give it the label email. The next up in column B, enter message. Then for column C, sent status. For column D, result. And that will be all for now. Back over in column A, I'd like you to enter the email addresses that you'd like to send these emails to. If you want to just enter one email address, just do so, like so. If you want to enter multiple ones, make sure you separate them with a comma and no spaces. So for example, comma, just like that. Once you've entered all the emails that you'd like to send out these notifications to, all you have to do is click, copy, and drag these down to row 31. And what we're going to do at this point is delete all the unnecessary rows. So select from row 32, scroll to the very bottom of the sheet, Shift select row 1000, right click and delete. Very, very good. Next up, we're going to have our message. And to build our message really quickly, we're going to do this in 3 parts. Firstly, over in column G, in row 2, I'd like you to enter the number 1. Next up, in the cell below, I'd like you to enter equals G2 plus 1. Very good. Now I'd like you to click and select copy and drag this down until we get to number 15. If you drag too many, just delete the ones that are in excess. And now what we're going to do is we're going to select all these numbers. We're going to copy, Control-C or Command-C, then right-click, and then we're going to paste, special, paste values only. Very good. So now we've just got the numbers 1 to 15 with no formulas. Now I'd like you to simply select the numbers again, copy them, and paste them just below that number 15 there in G17. Very good. Now, why have I done this? Well, because we've actually got 15 weeks and we've got 2 KPIs, and that gives us a possible potential 30 messages to send out. 15 times 2, of course. So in column F, now we're going to start building this message. So I'd like you to enter the following. Just as a string, so just typing normally, enter blog KPI 1 week. Just like that. Now what we're going to do over in column E is we're going to combine these together with a space in between. So in E2, write equals, concatenate, just like we did before. Now select F2, press comma. Now we're going to use quotation marks, space, quotation marks, then comma. So we've got a space there in between them. And now select G2. Enter. Now if we just drag column E out a little bit, we can see that we have this message being populated here. Now what I'd like you to do is to select F2 and drag it down to the very end of the first set of numbers plus one cell. So drag it down to row 17. Excellent. So now you can see some of the message starting to form. But what we have to do now is get this message for KPI 2 for the rest of these numbers down here. So all we have to do is to open the formula in F17, replace the 1 with a 2, press enter, and we're going to copy and drag this cell F17 down to the end of that column. Now for the fun part, in one fell stroke, we can select E2, drag it down to the very bottom. Great! And now we have all these messages that tell us which KPI has been hit and in which week, which is very helpful. Now to complete our message, which is going to eventually arrive in column B, we want to add one more word, or something that tells us that the KPI has been met. So perhaps blog KPI 1, week 1 has been met. Let's try that. In B2, write equals, concatenate, then select E2, comma, quotation marks, then space, and now I'm just going to write the words, has been met. Exclamation mark, woot. Brilliant. Now, finish off your sentence with a double quotation marks and press enter. Too easy. Let's resize column B so we can see our full message and copy and drag this message down to the bottom of the sheet. Very good. Now we can leave our sent status column up in column C because this column is going to be filled out by our Google script as it goes through and checks which emails it has already sent and which ones it hasn't. However, for column D, we do need to drag these results in. And we're going to do this really easily using a really cool function called transpose. So in D2, write equals transpose. Now go over to the blog sheet and we want to select all of the KPI 1 remaining data. So select from D5 all the way over to R5. Press enter. Excellent. Now we're going to do the same thing in D17 for KPI 2. So write equals transpose, select the blog sheet, and now we're going to select all of KPI 2 remaining. So select from D11 all the way through to R11. Press enter. Too easy. Brilliant. Well, now you're ready to take on Google Scripts. So let's go up to Tools, Script Editor, and begin our script. Now, if you haven't been to the script editor before, well, welcome. It looks like an empty house right now, but it won't for long. So the first thing you'll need to do is rename the project to something memorable. Let's rename it to KPI Emailer. And now we're going to jump into the code. So if you haven't had much coding experience before, don't worry at all. I'm going to take you through step by step every way of the process. If you have had some coding experience before, then you'll be delighted to know that Google Scripts runs on a JavaScript framework. So if you've done some JS, you'll feel right at home. The first thing we're going to do is just delete what we have here in the code editor. So select it all and delete it. And now we're going to start by declaring a variable. The variable is going to be called email sent. To do this, you simply have to enter var, space, and now we have to name the variable. We're going to name it email_sent, just like that. And the most common thing we do with variables is store things in them. And the way to do that is to use the equal parameter. So enter equals, and then a space, and we're going to enter a string, and it's going to simply say email sent again. email underscore sent with an inverted commas. So to quickly recap, what this is doing is creating a variable called email sent and storing the string email sent inside it. That's all it's doing. Now in Google Scripts, you have to end every line with a semicolon, just like so. Now, 2 lines down, we're going to create a function where all the magic is going to happen. To create a function, you have to first write the word function. Next, add a space and give your function a name. I'm going to call it send emails. At the end of every function name, you have to add a opening and closing brackets. So we're going to do that now. Usually, if you have something extra to add between them, you can, but we don't. So leave them as they are. Now add a space and let's add a curly brackets to begin the function. Now press enter. Now, because we're writing inside our function now and all the lines below are going to be inside the function, we want to indent the following lines using the tab key. So press tab twice. And this just makes our code easier to read and is just generally good syntax. So once you've added those indentations, we're going to create another variable. So enter var again. And this time we're going to use a special Google function to find the current sheet that we're working on. And then we're going to store it in this variable called sheet. So first write the variable name sheet, then equals, and write this very specific function here. Capital S, spreadsheet, app, dot, get active spreadsheet. It's usually in this list here. Then at the end of that, dot get sheet by name. And once you've got this line here, in the name field just here, we're going to replace that with the name of the spreadsheet that we're going to be using. And in this case, it's going to be, in inverted commas, KPI emailer. Now, it's very important that this name matches the worksheet that we're working on literally character by character. So it has to have the same thing, no spaces, just like that. Very good. We have to end this line with a semicolon, as always. Okay, now we have to create another variable that tells the spreadsheet where to start looking for all the data once it actually gets to this sheet over here. So on line 5, let's add another variable called start row. And if we want to find this row, let's head back over to our sheet. And we can see that our data actually begins on row 2, not row 1. Row 1 has our headers. So the answer, of course, will be 2 here. So enter 2, and then enter. Now, it's great that we've told the spreadsheet what row to start looking from, but how many rows should it look through? Well, we're going to create a new variable now called number of rows, num rows. And this is going to equal 30. Because if we go over to our spreadsheet, we can see that there is exactly 30 rows between the first row of data and the very last. Okay, so now our Google script is getting a bit more comfortable. It knows which sheet to look in, and it knows roughly where to look, but it hasn't actually started looking yet. So now we have to make it do that. So we're going to create another variable, and this variable is going to be called data range. And what this will effectively do is go over to our spreadsheet and just select the entire range of all the rows that we specify. So let's go back to our code. So we're going to enter sheet, which is our variable over here, then dot get range, brackets, and now we're going to specify the start row. And I've just noticed a small error over here. We've left out a T, so let's add the T. And the start row is going to be 1, and the number of rows, which is our other variable, then 30. So of this range that we have, we're going to be starting in the first row of the range and proceeding 30 times down to the very end. Very good. Let's go back through and add some of these missing semicolons that we have here. Very good. Next, we're going to create another variable, and this is going to be the actual data from the range that we just selected. So enter the word data. We'll just call it data. That seems like a logical name for this variable. And we're going to call it data range dot get values. And what this is going to do is, now that we've selected this whole range, it's going to grab the values out of all those cells, which we're going to use very, very shortly. Okay, next up we're going to create a for loop. And what the for loop is going to do is get the script to look through each row systematically within the range that we just specified to find all the emails, the subject messages, and the results for each of these emails that need to be sent out. So let's go ahead and create that. To begin, we're going to enter the word for, because it's a for loop, and in brackets, we're going to declare a new variable. The variable is going to be called I, and it's going to initially just equal 0. This is the first part of the for loop. The next part we're going to specify is that I is not going to get any greater than the length of our data. So we write I is less than data.length, and we'll leave it at that. Next up, we're going to make the for loop continuously search, so ++I. Brilliant. Now space and enter a opening curly brackets, and now on the next line we're going to indent it twice. Now here is where we're going to specify the subject of the email of each one, the message, and so on. So for our first variable we're going to create is firstly the row, because it needs to know which row to begin, and that's just going to equal whatever the data is. So you can write data, then select I within it. The next variable is going to be the email address. And the email address is in row 0. And I'll explain that right now. So within the data range that we've selected, if we go over here, the first column is actually 0 when it comes to selecting it. And then the next one's going to be 1, and the next one's going to be 2 so far. It actually starts from 0. So that's why our email addresses, which are in Indeed, the first column, are going to be column 0. In the next variable, we're going to capture our message. Why not? We'll do the message next. And this is going to be in row 1, of course. The next variable we'll capture is our email sent. And that's going to be in row 2. The next variable we'll capture is our result, which I will just double check, but I'm fairly sure it's in row 3. Let's just have a look. Yes, it is. Row 3. Excellent. On each of these lines, let's add a semicolon to close them off. Very good. Brilliant. Now we have this for loop that's going to continuously search through all that data to find the right, firstly the right row to start from, and then find the email, the message, and the result. And also the sent status, of course. And now for the most critical part of this Google script. We need to create an if statement that's going to check two things. Firstly, it's going to check if email sent status here has anything in it. And if it doesn't, then it can send the email. But that's not the only criteria it has to confirm. It also has to confirm that the result here equals the word none. Because in our blog over here, when this KPI1 remaining gets down to 0, it's going to print the word none, of course. So once those two conditions are met, that this equals none and it hasn't sent an email, it will send an email out. That's the logic behind the script. So back in our script here, let's write if. Now, if email sent does not equal, so exclamation mark equals, does not equal email underscore sent, and result does equal the word none, then we can send an email. So that's how it's going to work. So we can add a curly brackets to begin this if statement. And on the next line, I'm going to indent it again. And we're going to declare the subject of the email. Technically, we could also do this up here as well, but generally the subject is not going to change. It's just going to be something general like KPI has been met. And then the actual message, the body of the message will tell you all about which one it is. So we can just leave it here and specify it once at the time we send the email. So variable subject equals, and now we will just declare a string like KPI has been met. That'll do. Fantastic. And now we can actually send the email. So write mail app to send the email dot send email brackets. And now we have to enter the arguments that send email has as a function. And that is firstly the email address, which we've stored in a variable quite conveniently. Then the subject. Then the message with a space in between all of these. Of course. Great. So just in case you're unsure where these are coming from, these are actually the variables here that we've just created. So subject, subject, message, message, and so forth. Now, after it's sent the email, we want the script to go through, find this sent status column and label that it's been sent. To do this, we're going to firstly get the range. So write sheet.getRange. And then we'll write start row plus I to find the range. And then it's in column, which column is it? Well, it's column 3. If we have a look at here, there it is, column 3. Then we're going to set the value. So this is a really good one to know in future when you write Google scripts. If you want the script to actually insert a value into a cell, it's .setValue. That's the function. Brackets. And now we can just simply add this variable that we put up the top here, which is email underscore sent. So email underscore sent. Easy as that. And at the end of the script now, we're going to run a very special function called spreadsheet app.flush. And what this does is, just in case the spreadsheet has been closed or something's been modified, the script is going to continue to run and won't be disturbed. So let's add it, spreadsheet app.flush. And now finally, we need to close off these curly brackets. So firstly, find out how many you have. We've got 1, 2, 3. Let's do so. So we're going to have one closing one. Then on 2 lines down, we'll have another one. Then finally, at the very end, we'll have one more. Okay, now your script's ready to debug. So go up to the bug symbol and press it. And if there's any errors, it will tell you up here in a message and tell you exactly what needs to be changed. Here is a very simple one. In line 10, we've got a comma here instead of a semicolon. So let's put that there and let's press debug again. Excellent. Now you'll have to accept the review permissions and authorize Google Scripts to use your account. Okay, and now we've got another message here that says script function not found, my function. And that is because in the beginning we had this function called my function, which was the default one, but we deleted that, so that's not there anymore. So when you see an error for a function that you know is not meant to be there anyway, you can just dismiss that. It doesn't really matter at all. So now we click save and click run. Brilliant. And if you've got no message that pops up, then you know it's working correctly. Now, there is just one setback at the moment. For this script to run, you have to actively go to the script editor and press the run button every time. And that's not very helpful. We want it to run automatically each time the spreadsheet is changed. To do this, we have to go up to the Resources tab, click on Current Project Triggers. And we have to set up a trigger. So select this URL just here. Now, firstly, we have to make sure the right function is selected. We've only got one, so you don't have to worry about that. Secondly, we're going to change the events time driven to from spreadsheet. And instead of on open, which is the default setting, we're going to select on change. You could select on edit, but that means the script will only run when you actively edit the spreadsheet. Whereas the on change function makes the script run every time the sheet is changed, whether you actively do it or not. So select on change, then save. Bravo! You're on your way to becoming a Google Scripts master. Let's move on to the final leg of our course, where we're going to create our dashboard. Excellent! Now that the hard work is done, let's put the cherry on the cake with a nice dashboard that centralizes all our KPI data across all the tasks we're tracking, which is only one so far, but that's okay. We have to start somewhere. So head over to the dashboard worksheet, and it's not just the dashboard, it's the dashboard. And up the top in row 1, let's add the following headers: channel, task, KPI, and KPI type. Next, we're going to add a section that's going to include all our KPI data for the current week. The first field we'll have is KPI, brackets, current week. Then we'll have total, current week, which is our KPI result. And finally, we'll have remaining, brackets, current week. Next up, in H1, we're going to have KPI total, which is all our goals for that particular KPI combined. And next we'll have total KPI result, which is the same thing but for our results. And finally, we'll add one more set of headers, which will be KPIs and results. These columns are going to feature something really cool called Google Sparkline graphs, which you'll see in a minute. But first up, let's color the first 4 red, and the next 3 blue, and the final 4 red as well. And we'll give them a light white text. Excellent. What we will have to do is stretch out these middle columns so we can read the full cells. Very nice. And then we'll freeze the whole of row 1. Next, we'll start filling out the data for the first 4 columns manually. There's no point in adding cell references from the blog sheet here. It just takes too much time and we all have things to do and places to be, do we not? So, the channel over in column A, in this case, is going to be content marketing. And for the task, what we will do here is create a URL link to the sheet that contains the task so that we can have a shortcut from the dashboard in case we're tracking a lot of tasks at once. So first, go over to the blog sheet, and in the URL bar up the very top, I'd like you to copy the entire URL, including the ID tag at the very end. Now head back over to the dashboard, and in B2, write equals hyperlink. Then, in inverted commas, enter the URL, followed by a closing inverted commas, then comma, then once again in inverted commas, write the title of the task. Excellent. Now we have a nice little shortcut here. Next, let's fill in the KPIs we have, so KPI 1 and KPI 2. And we'll fill in the KPI type, which is going to be the same for both. And for our current week KPIs, we'll use a ℏlookup statement to search the blog sheet. So in E2, write equals ℏlookup, Then head over to the blog sheet. Now we want to look up B6 that has our current week date. Then press comma. And our range is going to be from D2 all the way through to R3, which is the end of that row. Followed by a comma. And the row we want to return is 2, then false. Excellent, we have our KPI for the current week. We'll do the same thing for E3. So enter equals ℏlookup, head over to the blog sheet, select B6, which is our date, comma, and our new range is going to be slightly bigger. It's going to be from D2 all the way down to, let's say, R10, just to be safe. And what we want to return is our KPI2 KPI, which is going to be row 8. Then false. Excellent. The total amount of email signups that we've got in the current week is going to be similar. So in F2, write equals ℏlookup, go to the blog, select B6, which is our current week, and our range is going to be from D2 right through to R4. So we can return this KPI1 result here in row 4. So let's press comma, and we'll be returning row 3. Then false. Excellent. Very nice. Let's do the same thing for the next one, KPI2. In F3, write equals ℏlookup, blog, B6. Select a slightly larger range, of course, because we have to get all the way down to this one, KPI2 result, in row 10. So let's select from D2. And let's just select down to maybe R11. Just add one extra one there. And we'll be returning row 10, of course, to get KPI2 result. Then false. Excellent. To calculate how many email signups we have left remaining for our current week, it's much easier. We just have to subtract this from this. But we don't want to get into negative numbers, so we're going to start off with an if statement first. So equals if, and we'll put 2 brackets there, and let's say if E2 minus F2 is less than 0, then just display nothing. Otherwise, do the calculation E2 minus F2. Enter. Very nice. Your formula should look just like this up the top there. And to get the same thing for KPI2, we simply have to click and drag copy this formula down. Very nice. So now we've got this little snapshot here of our progress for the current week, which is extremely handy to have. And in our final section over here, we're just going to get a feel for how we're going overall. We'll do that using a sum function. So write equals sum. Then we'll head over to the blog sheet and we'll select from blog D3 all the way to R3. You can just write colon R3 because we know the final column is R. And this gives us all our KPIs summed up together that we've set. Excellent. So we've set a total of 1,500 email signups that we have to hit overall. Let's do the same thing for KPI2. So enter equals sum, head over to the blog sheet, and we'll select all of KPI2 down here. So that would be D9 all the way through to R9. Excellent. And as you can imagine, the sum of all our KPI results in column I is just as easy to find. So in I2, write equals sum blog sheet, and we're going to sum all the KPI1 results first. So from D4 through to R4. And we'll do the same thing for KPI2. write equals sum, go to the blog sheet, and we'll do all of row 10, so blog D10 to R10. And now for what I think is the coolest part of this is our Google Sparkline graphs. In J1, simply type equals Sparkline, then go over to the blog sheet, and let's select from D3 through to R3. And now we have a graph in a cell, which is really cool. And you can't see it moving at the moment, but if you go back over to our blog sheet, and we change some of these KPIs, let's give these some diverse KPIs. Now, if we go back to the dashboard, you can see that the graph is updating itself automatically. Let's do the same thing for KPI 2. So in J3, write equals Sparkline, go to the blog, and we'll select all of D9. So select D9, then write columns to R9. Let's do the same thing for KPI 2. So in J3, write equals Sparkline, go to the blog, and we're going to select all of row 9, starting from column D. So select D9 there, then write colon R9. Excellent. Finally, we'll scroll over a little bit and we'll do the same thing for our results. So far we've got sparklines for the KPIs that we've set, but not the actual results that we got. So in K2, write equals Sparkline, go to the blog. This one's going to be our KPI 1 result, so select from D4 through to R4. And we'll do the same thing for KPI 2. So in K3, write equals Sparkline, and we'll select from D10 through to R10. Great! So now that we have all our data here for our first task, let's resize all the columns so we can read all our entries. So select everything by going up to the top left-hand corner and selecting this blank space up the top there, and double-click on any of the column handles. Great. Okay, so we may have added cherries to the cake, but why not go all the way with sprinkles? Yeah, sprinkles! And these sprinkles will come in the form of charts. And just like sprinkles, you can get as creative as you like with them. But we'll start with a basic chart, the KPI versus KPI results chart, because that way we can visually see how realistic we are when we set them in the first place. To create one, just go up to the chart icon here, use the data selector, and now go over to the blog sheet. Now what we're going to do is select all the KPI 1 and KPI 2 result data in columns 3 and 4, including the headers in column C. So select from C3 to C4 and drag right across to column R. Press OK. Now what we're going to do is firstly select which type of chart it is going to be, and let's select column chart. Now what we want to do is switch rows and columns and use column C as headers. Now our headers appear just here and our KPIs are correct. Next we might give this chart a name. So go to the customization tab, and for chart title, let's say KPI 1 versus KPI 1 results. Now go down to insert. Fantastic. Now let's make this a little bit smaller, drag it over to the side, and we'll do the same thing for our KPI 2 data. So let's insert another chart, select the data selector, go to the blog. Now we want to select everything from C9 to R10. So these two rows here, starting from column C, press OK, select switch rows, use column C as headers, and let's select the column graph once again. Go to the customization tab, and we'll enter the title. So KPI 2 versus KPI 2 results. And insert. Too easy. Let's resize it. Put it right there. And we have our first two charts. And instead of moving these tasks to their own worksheet, which you can do easily by clicking this drop-down arrow, we're going to just leave them in the center here, so that once you're tracking multiple tasks, you'll be able to just scroll through this sheet and have all the charts lined up next to each other so you can make comparisons. That's one wicked spreadsheet. Fantastic. Well, I hope you've really enjoyed this course learning about what you can do with Zapier, MailChimp, Google Scripts, and Google Sheets. I know I've really enjoyed teaching it. And if you have any questions at all or just want to say hi, you can reach out to me on leanstartup.chat or on Twitter. I wish you all the best for all the projects that you're working on, and I can't wait to see you in the next course. So all the best and talk soon.